Empire. If you know anything about it, you're in one or two camps. It was a catastrophe, or you don't care. And whilst Total War has been chugging along since then without any major nightmares, the legacy Empire laid down is present in the succeeding Total Wars and now in Rome too. And it's a legacy I hate. It was 2009 and a brilliant new game was on the horizon. The largest Total War game to date, with a new engine, gunpowder, and ship battles. Too bad it was the broken fucking mess we were given. As buggy as the tropics, with AI, the mental age of a toddler, the horrific butchering of standard user interface features, and all the polish of a rusty tap. It wasn't the game you promised us, James.
You lied to us!
Not many people think this game is much of a problem to the future. To Rome 2, neither did I until I watched the dev video. Something clicked, and I suddenly noticed this bloody terrible inherited feature of Empire, no unit collision. Now you wouldn't believe this would be a problem on first glance, but think about it. Did Xerxes win at Thermopylae because he could clusterfuck his 200,000 soldiers into one rank? But along with bad mechanics, we can see bad practices. The DLC whoring that's getting progressively worse. I mean, in Shogun it didn't matter because the factions were identical. But with the recent announcement of Pontus as free Day 1 DLC, it's gonna become obvious that Creative Assembly are gonna bleed us dry to get the full game experience we really should have on launch. The flaws of Empire are carrying over and they've gotten worse. What's wrong with Empire then? Fucking everything. Let's begin. First of all, bugs. Empire's launch was a myriad of amateur mistakes, constant crashes to desktop, monumental lag spikes on the campaign map, horrific save game corruptions, ships getting stuck in the trade zones, and this fucking thing. This happens in every Total War launch. The complete failure to beta test is just sad. Now, the worst bugs were eventually patched out, mostly, except for the battle bugs, which they kindly left in mainly for the heritage value. So, we get into combat, and you've lined your men up. Here they come. Now there's a hill in the way, and what's important is that your men will only fire until the enemy peak the crest. Fun fact, muskets take 15 seconds to reload. After that devastating barrage, we're going to take the initiative. The great feature of this game is that soldiers react dynamically to the battlefield. It's important that they don't wait for rigid formations to form before they fire, especially in case one soldier bugs out and gets stuck on a tree, so that they don't just sit there as target dummies. Another great feature is how the soldiers can turn and look to the side slightly to fire. If they didn't fight with the most rudimentary sense, the whole unit would reform and wheel about to shoot at men only the tiniest fraction to the side, who will have already charged by the time the unit has completed your orders. My personal favourite feature is the platoon firing drill that your most elite troops are trained in. What was cleverly noticed by Creative Assembly was that in battle, speed was of the essence, and that if every time you gave a fire order your men either wheel about, reform, or shuffle forwards, it would become nearly impossible to prioritise targets or keep formation, both the most pivotal essentialities of 18th century warfare. Coupled with your soldiers' schizophrenic interpretation of orders, you get to deal with a close combat system as tooth-shatteringly logic-defying as infiltrated units in Dark Crusade. A unit of 80 men on horse should take tops 5 seconds to kill an undefended artillery team of 20. Why doesn't it? Zoom in and look for yourself. Your clockwork retards on horseback are just sitting and watching. Watch this scene and see how many times a cavalryman could have attacked but was just sitting around. Why? Why? Why aren't they attacking for? I'll tell you why. It's because of those kill moves, the system they introduced for the cinematic experience. The problem is that only one man can attack another at the same time, so no matter how blatantly outnumbered a soldier is, only a kill move can take him out. This wasn't a problem in Rome. You just charged. Everyone hacked away at each other. 4 soldiers could gang up on one and kill him quickly. In Empire, however, they just stuff around, wasting my time and buggering up your careful strategy. All the pausing, all the shuffling, all the fucking around before soldiers do what they're meant to stops the battles from working properly. Multiplayer came down to whoever's troops didn't bug out the most. Now the other Total Wars had their special moments too, by the Christ they did, but most of them were just fucking weird. There were very few glitches that cost you battles. Empire, however, is littered with them. Secondly, the AI. Okay, let's face it, the AI in Total War has always been at the Hague level of terrible. Charging headfirst at a brick wall or sulking on a hill and refusing to move was just about all it could muster. But at least in the previous games it tried to keep a formation and attack you in it, but you guessed it, in Empire they didn't even care. Seriously, council workers try harder than the AI department of creative assembly. In the campaign map, the unpatched game was just depressing. Whether it was the computer recruiting an army that resembled a mad woman's breakfast or the computer being unable to send armies onto boats and cross the ocean. I mean, that just seems like something it might need to do in a game with the Atlantic between the two land masses. Worst of all is diplomacy. It was one step forwards with removing diplomats, a fucking car accident backwards with making all the factions act with the sense, thought, and comprehension of a mangled cat. Here is Poland, who demands half my empire in return for military access. This is turn 1. Why the fuck would I want to walk through that shithole? Where your best allies, who are at best relations with you, refuse to give you the technological equivalent of the wheelbarrow in return for a ballistic missile, where the arse end of the world spits in your empire's face for daring to request trade, or God forbid an alliance. AI that looks as though it decides foreign policy by a dice roll instead of the global situation, or increasing the difficulty just made everyone declare war on you by turn 2. Oh, but it clearly says Total War on the cover. No, okay, this is a strategy game. There has to be strategy and reasons. All these fuck-off factions just zerg at you for no goddamn reason. It's not like in DEF CON where you initiate Operation Everybody Fuck China. There actually has to be some fucking rationale for declaring war on me. All I'm doing is building universities. At least with the patches, the pants-on-head retardation of armies is toned down. But the diplomacy still works as shittily as ever. And then we get to battles. Battles where the AI is even worse. Enemy units who dumbly gawp whilst being shot to pieces, lacking the mental agility to turn around. Enemies who do not advance in a battle line, but instead attack in a zigzag and engage your forces in the Jackson Pollock formation. Does this look rational to you? They're called line infantry for a reason. It's because they fought in a fucking line. Enemies who charge cavalry by themselves to be shot down, who use skirmishers as cannon fodder, who treat artillery as observers, never bombarding you and instead always charging blithely in. Or instead enemies who attack you on the campaign map and then camp on a hill for the battle. Sometimes they even attack your fortress and attack on the battle map and sit around without having artillery. They just sit and stare at your walls in wonder whilst you wait for the battle timer to run out. Oh, and if you turned off battle timer, well, you get to paddle merrily up shit creek with your hands today. Enemies who waltz their general into firing range to prove how brave he is, who never seem to keep units in reserve, who never try to bait you into charging forwards, who do not fight with even a shred of tactics, whose idea of grand strategy is equatable to a bum rush, and whose tactical mindset can be characterized as oh fuck it, and whose programming was completed with all the quivering ambition of toenail clippings. It really says something when the most downloaded mods for Medieval 2 are the ones that are complete overhauls into Warhammer Fantasy and Lord of the Rings, whilst in Empire the most downloaded mod is the one which fixes the AI. Fucking Jesus. Thirdly, the lost features. You know what makes a game great? Having a quick, easy interface that makes playing the game seamless, simple and intuitive. but bugger comfort and stuff trying, because Creative Assembly have got the Warpath DLC pack to make, so all the great ideas from the last games can stay there. If we dumb down the game enough, maybe all the alcoholics on the console will buy it. Dumbing down the settlements to be 5 buildings. Oh, but what about the towns? Oh, fuck off. Towns in the last game would be settlements by themselves. What I enjoyed in the last game was the almost RPG-like quality of planning settlements for different purposes, making a city into a trade hub, a citadel into a nightspan facility, and so on. But now, every city is the exact same, apart from the smaller provinces that, despite how high their population gets, stay small and unupgradable. I guess I could have forgiven it if they didn't just make the map bigger and keep the same amount of provinces. There are 20 more tops. The Rome mods have more. Agents spawn randomly where you don't need them on the other side of the world where you can't get them. Even more infuriating is the butchering of all the nice subtle ways to use agents. You can no longer infect spies with plagues and spread disease through enemy lands as a means of halting their advance and weakening their armies. You cannot bribe enemy armies and agents. Spreading an opposing religion through other lands inflicts barely noticeable unrest in the region. You cannot put rebellious cities to the sword to teach the lower classes not to rebel. Characters no longer have a deep system of different attributes like command, influence, management, loyalty, authority, chivalry, and dread. They cut it all out in favour of dumbed-down agents. Wow, I can assassinate people? It's a shame the AI doesn't recruit generals. Will the inspiring leader of the greatest army on Earth have an effect on the settlement he's in? No? Oh, okay, fine. All of these choices were incredibly viable and potent options in the previous games, offering someone with a bit of cunning a better way to defeat an opponent and manage their empire. In battles, they changed how the UI works subtly. The perfect level of subtle. You don't realise until after it stuffs you up. Right-clicking with a host of units will no longer make them keep the formation they had when they were at rest, because I really want my cannons, pikemen, and cavalry to all stand next to each other in a line. There is no longer a tool you can press to distinguish all your troops with that of the enemy. Look how blinkin' helpful it is. It is impossible to place unit cards in the order you want. They turn up in a random order instead. I don't know. Maybe I wanted all my cavalry in one spot on my unit bar so I could keep an eye on them or something, because I don't know. When they're riddled through my taskbar like the mercury in Creative Assembly's water supply, it might just be a little difficult to manage. The balance of power tool no longer tells you the percentage of your force and enemy forces that are dead. Instead, it helpfully says balance of power tool. Tooltips do not explain what traits do instantaneously. Instead, you must wait upwards of a minute for the game to cycle through useless information. Go on a battle announcers providing updates on your army's performance and difficulties. Prisoners can no longer be captured and sold, and the camera will still not zoom out far enough. I can't fucking see anything. There was no reason to cut these out of the game. Creative Assembly was just too lazy or too stupid to include the features. Fourthly, the polish. Every subsequent Total War has managed to add new features to the series. The epitome of game polish ended with the Kingdom's expansion for Medieval 2. All the factions sounded different, and that is all of them, every single one. English merchants sounded English, German knights sounded German, and Scottish diplomats sounded brain dead.
You know you can trust a Scot, my lord.
You could spend half an hour clicking through them all to hear the stereotypes, and as you play through the campaign map you got little announcements about minor historical events. Several of the more cataclysmic ones even had accompanying movies.
It is easy to become comfortable with the enemy you know, our familiar foes. But to discount the menaces that lurk beyond the known world is to risk a rude awakening that can become a nightmare. This nightmare is the Mongol invasion.
Most important of all was the music and sounds they put into the game. Combat sounded like they were, fighting to the fucking death. The music complemented the battle noises and worked well with the screams and clashes because that's what the tune was designed around, fast-paced drums and shouting. But in Empire, soldiers speak in a mumbled whisper, yeah. Listen to them charge, they sound fucking keen, don't they? It's like I'm almost really there, watching the paint dry in person. This is what they should sound like. Sound effects play a much bigger role in making a piece of media come to life than you may believe. Have you seen the ending to E.T. without the music? It's fucking stupid. Games like Stronghold realise this. I mean, look at it. It's Pixel Wars, yet there's so much more colour and life than Empire ever would, no matter how many kill moves they dump into the game. The men you command you can barely hear and they speak another language. Here's another file of Stronghold. This is me selecting the cannon fodder unit Ladderman.
I can't fight with this ladder, my lord.
From this sound file, I know he is scared, helpless and worried. Here's me selecting a knight.
Cut them down!
His second dialogue, I know he's exhilarated, brave and charging. They have both, within 2 seconds, made 2 characters in the battle for me, bringing it alive and making it semi-interesting. Nothing fucking happens in Empire. The soldiers are a surreal horde of robots. And you know what really complements emotionless automatons? Music that is a constant, high-pitched drone. The music conveys in a battle all the frantic urgentness of fermenting potatoes. Let's compare them, shall we? A battle of the 2 cheapest units in both games using the principal theme music, and you tell me which one made the Battle of Peasants tense.
The halt button in the bottom right of the screen.
his wife, and now he feeds carrion birds. His men may soon be bird food too.
The shitty sound effects and droning music already handicap battles in Empire, but when the combat itself looks lifeless and dull, there's no hope for the game. Zoom in on your soldiers and what do you see? They are gliding. Not running, not walking, sliding around on the ground. Sliding around so that they can get into a semblance of a position for those bloody kill moves that never line up properly anyway. It's really interesting that Medieval and Rome's cinematic openings were just in-game footage with in-game music and sounds, and that they were a million times more exhilarating than Empire's shitty CG opening. That's it really. The holy trinity of music, sound and animation that is what truly fucks this game up. Everything else is either a nitpick or really easily fixed, but it's these problems that make the battles dull and uninteresting, the campaign map a catatonic level of tedium to play in, and the whole experience just so goddamn forgettable. The fact that the game is not alive. Here is Medieval and Rome. Here are soldiers fighting and dying. We all have a good moment in both games where through luck and sheer force of will you pulled off some miraculous victory where a tiny force held off thousands, made all the better by the music building the tension and by zooming in to the crucial place in the line to see your men fight heroically. There's never anything like that in Empire, and that's what makes it truly fail. These are the problems Empire suffered from. The game was such a disaster that it stopped me and a lot of other fans from buying any new Total War for a long time. What made it so aggravating is how Empire teases you with greatness. Every time you almost feel something memorable happening. A bug ruins it, the AI shits itself, or the music whimpers in the corner. People say if you don't like it, don't play it. Well, I did like it. I played it for hundreds of hours. Why? Well, because it's one of the only games that's set during that time period. Certainly one of the only strategy games. But they pulled a bodge job and created the mess I've just explained to you. What really pisses me off is it was just so easy to improve it immeasurably. It needed a few dozen voice actors, paying a YouTube musician a pittance to write some good songs and music, or, for fuck's sakes, use period music. It's the time of gargantuan orchestral epics, 1812 Overture. Getting the most basic of battle noises and screams, putting in unit collisions, simplifying kill moves so that they'd work properly, having tiny animations and noises as you select buildings around the campaign, or even simpler, just a colored drawing with sound effects to try and bring some life into it. There were just so many tiny things that Creative Assembly didn't do, for whatever reason. But now we look to the future, to Rome 2. Why am I so worried about the one highlight I found? Because unless it's something they've yet to eliminate, it's showing a failure to realise that in that time, having disciplined formations that held the position was what won you battles. Being able to just crush 50 fucking units together is just stupid and logic defying. Instead of having formations, units in reserve, protecting your flanks and to attack the enemies, it's just right click, whoever has more men wins. History is littered with examples where stupid commanders thought that tactic would work, or when a small, tightly packed unit in a key position defeated colossal armies. Look up the battle where Boudicca was defeated. 10,000 disciplined Romans held formation in a choke point and defeated 230,000 British. Why? Because in a choke point the attackers only have as many men as the defenders, but without unit collision the attackers have as many men as they want versus the front rank. I'm sick of seeing enemy units just run through a tight formation. The lack of unit collision is fucking these games up and it's pissing me off. Just fix it. Lastly, reflection. I got the latest Total Wars dirt cheap recently and was interested to see in how they'd changed the game. Well, one great thing is their agents. They all work perfectly now, as in each one has a usable purpose on the campaign map. And whilst I still prefer the old way of building management, they have made the new version better. It isn't just a flat upgrade path like in Empire. What I especially like is how when you reach late game, every faction suddenly realizes what a problem you are and actually unite against you. This is important because it makes late game actually challenging to play in. In Rome and Medieval, the only time it was difficult was in early game when you had one army, or sometimes in mid game where you were spastic with foreign policy. Oh, and they finally fixed siege battles, thank fuck. Yet those aren't the core problems of the last games. Kill moves are still ruining the combat, and the lack of unit collision is, like I said earlier, the bane of my existence. Sound effects for battles are improved, but not enough. They need to be louder and chunkier. Oh, and get rid of the fucking shaky cam, it's just annoying. Music is just as sad as it has always been. Yeah, okay, it's Japanese. Big fucking whoop. Whilst the style they're using works well for the campaign map and for deployment, the style that's built around peace and harmony doesn't work for cataclysmic death and destruction. Lastly, I'm worried about their business practices. In Shogun, they fed us extra factions piecemeal. Now that was semi-okay in Shogun, because all the factions are really the same, but now we have Rome, and the 9 factions have been announced, and I have a bad feeling that they're the only playable ones on launch. Now this creates 2 problems. A, the other factions will be bland and unitless. All the Greek city-states will have multi-purpose hoplites and archers and cavalry. The rest of the successor kingdoms will have pikemen. Essentially, they're going to pull off another half-assed job. Or, scenario B, they will have diversity but only be playable with DLC, and decided to bleed the fans for money. We have 2 shitty fucking situations. A fuck-off effort or on-disc DLC. Both are horrific scenarios, and if both are in the game, i.e. the factions are bland and only interesting with DLC, we're going to have a game akin to Empire. Now what's an acceptable way around this? While some factions are unique, like Sparta, Sarmatia and Thrace, there are others that aren't. I mean, the Greek colony of Marseille isn't that special, so either have the unique ones unlockable on campaign, or if they aren't good campaign factions like a Greek city-state, have them playable in multiplayer and custom battles. Yeah, I know Sparta was not a power in that time. It doesn't matter. The first thing anyone will do when they download Rome 2 is go Greek city-states, choose a bridge battle and reenact 300. You know what's great DLC? The scripted historical battles. Sell us those $1 a piece. Want a genius idea? Release the battle editor and do what TF2 does, publish scenarios people have made and sell those to people, splitting the money with the creator. You will make money that way for doing nothing. People can make money that way for creating scenarios. The community will have every battle they can think of. But Jesus Christ, Creative Assembly, don't abuse your fans, because honestly, the only reason you still have any is because Europa Universalis doesn't have battles and no one knows about King Arthur. If you agree with the video, subscribe. I'm bound to provide updates on this mess when I can, and other videos on other games. Yeah. Part 6. What about ship battles? Hang on, why didn't I mention ship battles in the review? The most hyped feature of the game? Well, it's because they were just kind of shit. Everyone was expecting this.
Will you marry me?
I don't think now's the best time!
What we got was cannon duels on boring, featureless maps with even more disconnection from the soldiers. Broadsides from a meter away were the only semi-interesting thing about them. With no tactics to speak of, large-scale battles being impossible to control, and the miserable polish, the ships in general were just shit. Winston Churchill once described British naval tradition as rum, sodomy and the lash. Christ, if only it was half that exciting. Oh, by the way, who the fuck put parkour guns in the game?